Welcome to the Disruptance Podcast. The Disruptance Podcast is the show that disrupts the way entrepreneurs think to make them more profitable and impactful. Rethink tired and outdated business norms to welcome innovation and unlock your unlimited possibilities. Here are your hosts, Eric Forney and Greg Fowler.
Eric, super excited about this one, as always, my friend. And today is a very special episode of Disruptance, and why I like to call it, because we're talking about Legos. That's right, toys. We're talking about the bricks here, but not really. Truly, Eric, I definitely want to get your take and thought process on where we're going here. That's the main start of the show here. Lego, what's up
for
with
a
that?
second? I wondered if you'd woken up in the middle of the night and stepped on Legos or something. Maybe the kids left them out on the floor or something.
I was going to say that is parent training. I don't know if you've seen that video that's out there, but there is literally a treadmill and somebody dumps a bucket of Legos on the treadmill and then you're running on it barefoot. That's kind of dad or mom training. So future-proof, anybody who's not a parent, get used to that.
That'll be the next podcast that we'll have to talk about Legos that way next.
It's awesome. Pain. They're not a toy. It's torture. So let's get into this though, Eric. I mean, correlation between Lego and where you're starting with in business and why this matters to anybody tuning in here on Disruptance today. Let's get into it.
Perfect. So I was the other day listening to a podcast and doing a little bit of research down whatever rabbit hole I was down like usual, and really dug into the origin story of Lego. And I thought the interesting component of it is that there's a ton of business application and lessons that can be gleaned from it. And, Lego started in 1932 as a byproduct of really the Great Depression and what amounted to be challenging economic times in Denmark. And so the founder started building toys for his kids in order to try to provide for his three boys and for his wife and family. And at a certain point, they were doing dozens or hundreds of various wooden toys. And someone gave him the complimentary, amazing advice that basically said, hey, if I wanted to buy a toy gun, I would go down to the guy who makes the best toy guns. If I wanted a wooden yo-yo, I'd go to the guy who makes the best wooden yo-yo. And so he gave him the benefit of the advice that if you want to be good at something, specialize in it and make it your singular focus.
Wow,
and last week, while in Austin, Texas, we had a mastermind with Gary Keller, and Gary was talking about how sales is simple, and I agree with him. By the way, I think that sales is simple. Now, there's a skill set component to it, and there are things that come with it. But from a real estate standpoint, sales is having conversations with people who are motivated and willing to be helped by the product that you offer, the service that you provide. And therefore the job is you just turn over as many rocks as possible until you find the ones that want you to help them and that have a problem that you can help with and are willing to hire you to help solve that problem. And nothing more, nothing less, right? We can get into the weeds on the semantics, but at the first principles level of it, that's what it is. And so, I find, Greg, that the most successful real estate agents and teams fundamentally believe that's true, that sales is simple. And so what I find is
not to jump in on you there, but I think, diving into that process for anybody who's tuning in and saying, okay, oversimplification, there's a lot of people, especially on your level and Gary's level, who would say, yes, it is simple. To any of the naysayers or anybody who's thinking about not really truly understanding where Eric's coming from, he's not saying that it's simple as in the fact that it's easy. The idea behind the simplicity of sales is truly simple, but it's still hard work. There's effort. There's dynamic into that for sure. And again, not to get into the weeds, as you said, Eric, but just wanted to clarify for anybody who's got their thinking caps on, really hanging on the words.
Well, I also think it's easy, but we don't have to go there just yet. But I think it's simple and easy.
I love it, Eric. I love it. There you go. All your dreams are crushed, everybody. I was trying to give you an out. You don't have it anymore. You're at the wrong show.
So I asked Gary this question because what I find is that the most successful real estate agents and real estate team owners think that sales is simple. And I agree with that. And what I find is that they rarely say that leadership and ownership is simple. And so the question that I asked Gary then was, is business ownership and leadership simple, or is it complicated? And I kind of expected him to say that it was like complicated, and leadership is something that you like learn and takes a really long time to become great at, because, you know, I've heard him say that the as long as it took for you to be great at sales, it'll probably take you 3 times longer to be great at leadership.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
kind of thinking he'd go down that rabbit hole and tell a lesson full of parables about leadership. And instead his response to me was, it's simple. It's all simple. It's simple. It's the exact same thing that you do in leadership that your people do in sales. It is all simple. Exactly what you do as a leader is exactly what your salespeople are doing. You just have a different customer, or a different target audience that you're working with than what your salespeople have. But at the end of the day, in leadership, your job is to wake up every day and say, okay, my goal is to go help someone else achieve their goals. And if I'm able to facilitate someone else achieving their goals today, then as a byproduct, I'll also achieve my goals. The question then becomes, is do I have enough people that I'm helping achieve their goals every day in order to achieve my goals? So the analogy that Gary said, which was basically, you know, if I have a goal as a business owner of selling 50,000 houses, well, I have a few ways that I can tackle this. I can get 50,000 real estate agents who want to sell one house a year, or I could get, you know, 10,000 real estate agents who want to sell 5 houses a year, or I could get 1,000 who want to sell 50. Right. So a lot of it just changes based on the mathematics component of it, which is, do I have enough people who want to help a certain number of people? And then am I helping them achieve their goals so that I achieve my goals? Happens to be the simple mathematics that a real estate agent does every day as well.
Well, with that though, Eric, I think that this is an important note to say in that context. So as a leader, you're, you know, making sure that the right people are on board and that they are moving down the road as one or together, right, for the common goal. But how do you, as a leader, or recommend anybody out there articulating or finding these people, the right person for the right position, for the right task, for their highest and best use of time? What advice would you give into that, or where's your thought go there?
Yeah. So a few different things, like, well, you know, I'll give you what kind of Gary's quote was, then I'll give you some tactics component of what I've done in the past or present to do that. And then some lessons about what someone can do when they, you know, after listening, what action can you take when you go look for the people that you want to be helping help their goals. And so, you know, Gary's response was you have to be motivated. Like straight up, like objective number one is, if you're in the organization and I work with you, you have to be motivated to hit your goals, because I'm not going to wake up every day and motivate and inspire you and pump your tires full of air every day, because if I have to go throughout the entire organization and pump everyone up, then it's going to be exhausting, right? I'm not waking up to be a spin class instructor. I'm waking up to work with people who are motivated and inspired to go help people to go achieve their goals. And so you have to be motivated. And then he said, I have to like you, because life is too short to work with miserable people.
Well said.
And so if I don't like you and you don't like me, then it's probably not going to be a real great working relationship. So you got to be motivated, and then we have to like each other. And then you have to be ideally over time, I'm looking for the best person for the job to fill the opening that's available. Or if I have someone in the job, I'm looking for someone better. And so it wasn't in the direct quote, but I, you know, in the past, I've heard Gary say something to the equivalent of like, if you're an NFL general manager, your job is to go out and get Tom Brady on your roster. If you have Josh McNown or, Kirk Cousins or any other scratch quarterback who, is a third tier, second tier, but still starting quarterback. You still have one objective, and that is, how do I trade or pick up in free agency Tom Brady? That's my objective, is how do I get the best person for the best position on my roster? And until I've fully achieved that, my job isn't done.
I like this thought too, Eric. So you're looking for the Tom Brady's of the world for every position that you're looking to fill, as a leader, as an entrepreneur. How do you know when that is truly Tom Brady?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a grace period, a time period, a task list? I mean, how are you judging that you made that right decision and that it truly is the Tom Brady's of the world, for those positions? I'm just curious.
Dude, that part's really that part. I'll give you my answer, and then I'll give you what Gary said when someone asked him a similar question. It's been a few years ago, but it's really stuck with me. And my answer is sometimes it's more art than science at some point. You get better at it over time as you make more hires.
Okay.
If you think about it this way, it's like, well, how do you know? I tell the story, like when 10 days after our first date, I told Lauren that I was going to marry her. And how did I know? I went on enough dates with other people to know the difference.
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
And so I made enough hires that didn't work out for the job in order to know the difference when I made the right hire. And it was really clear really early when I made the right hire for that job, right? And, my wife will laugh if she thinks that I hired her for that job. But you get the analogy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so part of it is you have to make more hires and you have to conduct more interviews. And then you also have to realize like where you are in the evolution of the business and of you as a leader. So if I'm thinking about starting a pickup sandlot football team, I'm probably not going to be able to go actually draft Tom Brady.
Right.
So it's possible that the opportunity doesn't match the potential of the person itself, or that I as a leader don't match the skill set of the person who I'm trying to go get in business with. So I have to get the best available person that I can get to sign up for the role and the opportunity, or at least create the vision of what the opportunity could become, and get the person who's willing to take on that project or that vision in order for that to actually go out and be accomplished. For instance, that's how I ended up at Livian, right? Which was, Livian didn't exist. There wasn't a name. There wasn't a company, nothing. It was purely a conversation with someone who I had a relationship and trust with that said, hey, this is the vision. Do you want to be a part of trying to go build this thing? It might work. It might not work. You want to get gangster and go do this.
There we go.
And so in my case, I said, yes. What's that?
Here and here you are.
Here we are. That's right. But it probably would have been really difficult to go hire a Fortune 500 CEO and just pitch that vision without a previous relationship and without having some level of trust and some level of like understanding around what the vision could look like and around the person that I'm getting into business with. And the willingness to do the work that was required in order to be part of a startup to try to achieve a long-term vision. So understanding then about like, okay, do you have vision and talent match, or is there a mismatch component to it? The thing that when Gary was asked that same question, Greg, what he said was, I think about goals in terms of possibility, not probability. And so his point was, if someone else somewhere has achieved that goal that I am setting out for, or that we're going for as a company, then my job is to think in terms of possibility, not probability. And therefore I just have to think from the standpoint of, am I hiring the person who's willing to go execute on what's possible instead of what's probable? And eventually you get the right person who's willing to go do the things to accomplish what's possible. Most people, however, will accept what's probable.
And I think that's a really deep thought for everybody to really contemplate and put to pace and practice as you do, Eric, and have done. I think this segues into a thought kind of prior to us jumping on here. You were articulating kind of a message or a thought process of, are your habits lining up with your goals? And I think that as all of that comes down to it, yes, there's leadership involvement. There's guidance, kind of casework to really move it forward. But ultimately, it lies on the individual and the habits that are done every day. So what are your thoughts on making sure that the people that you bring on, now that you've identified at your given level, your version of Tom Brady, how are you then articulating the goals and doing that in, collaboration with one another, but then also setting the expectations for good habits to actually meet or exceed those goals? What does that look like for you? What thoughts do you have on that?
Well, the best option is just to go hire someone who has good habits and then get out of the way. That would be the right answer, truth be told.
There you go. Yeah.
Honestly, Greg, if you think about it, like Gary doesn't call me in the morning. Adam doesn't call me in the morning. No one that I work with calls to go, "Hey, did you get out of bed this morning?"
Mm.
They just got in business with somebody who they knew would wake up motivated and committed to getting the result and taking the actions necessary to where they could then put their focus and energy on doing things that were important.
Wow.
And going to figure out how to get in business with more more talented people as well, and more by quantity, or more talent, right? You replace me with someone more talented. But the goal then is that becomes their focus. They don't need to worry about whether I got out of bed or not.
Got it.
When I think about leverage, one of the best things that can happen is when you have really good leverage, then you never think about it ever again. And
wow.
that's a pretty good sign of whether things are working well, is if you lose sight of it and stop consuming your own mental energy thinking about whether the job's being done and whether it's being done well. And so when you think about then the habits component of it, there's a few different ways that you could look at building this. Then is you have role model, role play, and real play. Okay. So as a leader, the job then is to actually role play, is to role model, right? At some point in time, if you want to teach your children how to grow up to be good adults, it would probably make sense for you to role model the behavior of the person that you would like for them to become. Because if every day you come home, Greg, and you're drunk and abusive to your wife, that's probably not the best role model for achieving that outcome. But you would smell like brute and, or like some like Axe or something, maybe, if you were hoping to role model that. But
yeah, there you go.
if that's one of your goals, I'm just saying. Otherwise, you start by role modeling it, right? You start by actually how you show up and lead yourself. And then you can look at how do you help to role play those components, as in like, how do you help your people work through what the habits might need to be in order to achieve their goals. And then how do they do it for real? As in like, how do you go through this phase of you do it as a leader, you like help them do it, we do it together. And then the person does it in real time on their own, independent of you. It starts with having clarity, though, on what are the actual goals. You can't build habits that align with your goals if you don't actually have goals.
Well
If
said.
you don't know where you're going, it's hard to go the right direction.
You don't have a target. How are you going to hit anything? I think talking about it from the earlier standpoint, actions speak louder than words. So I think looking at it from a representation of embodying the example and setting that process is massive. And that's from, a spousal sort of scenario. That's a parent scenario. And again, leader, colleague, and then that reflects down to clientele. Your behavior is going to be based off of what ends up getting mirrored back for a lot of instances. So I love this aspect, Eric, but let's get into the goals. So, all right, you've identified the individual, they already have good habits, or hopefully you're already starting with a good vessel, if you will. So then how are you taking it and kind of helping it mold together with setting proper expectations and goals, having clarity? What's that look like?
Well, it starts first with understanding then what are the goals of the business. Like, what is the purpose for why you're actually in business. If you don't understand why you're in business, maybe the business shouldn't actually remain open. And so once you understand then why you are in business, then
Sure.
you can build backwards to set goals from there. So then the goals become related to the business purpose. Then you go down granularly and say, okay, well then how does this role make the boat go faster? How does hiring this person make the boat go faster in order to achieve this overarching goal and purpose of the company? And yeah, go for it.
Oh, well, I was going to say that to me is massive as you're breaking those, orientations down. And I think that so many people get lost into that, and some people are softer on their thought process for goals, right? So, I don't want to shoot too far because then I'm going to set myself up for failure, or, it ends up being dependent on how their expectations are on them. So how do you dive into the individuals that you work with, Eric? I mean, everybody's different. I mean, where do you know when to push? When do you know when, hey, maybe their expectations are setting too high, maybe they're too low?
Yeah.
How does that look like for you when you're kind of guiding that process?
That's tough. You have to figure out if those are in fact their goals. Are they their goals? Or are they influenced by the people around them? I've seen that happen plenty of times, right? Where like everyone's hanging out in the locker room and they're like, we're going to do plank contest and it's going to take we're going to do like a 47-minute plank. And you're like, I'm actually not signing up for that goal. Like that's not something, one, that's realistic, or two, that I'm interested in. But there are plenty of people who will accept peer pressure goals because the, others around in the organization will put those type of goals together. Some are realistic and some are delusional. And so then in your one-on-one as a leader, you've got to get with the individual salesperson or the individual person in the organization and say, okay, let's look at the body of work and let's see if there's one, the habits and the activities that align at any point in time in the past with the person that's required in order to achieve that desired outcome. So for instance, if someone's like, you know what, I'm going to lose 50 pounds next year and I'm going to work out 7 days a week.
Okay.
I hope you do. I think that's a fantastic goal. Now we're going to work backwards and say then, okay, well, have you done 7 days a week and, or have you lost weight previously? Or is this going to be an all brand new habit? And we've got to basically launch you to Mars from a standstill. Wow. Without ever having been in a NASA suit and ever having been to the International Space Station, because that's going to require a drastically different level of lift than what it would take if that's just a small iteration on the way to Mars. And so I kind of have to understand then, does the past align with the future goal? Do the activities align with the trend line that would lead someone to believe that? And is there a commitment and a desire big enough that burns hot enough to actually achieve that outcome?
Wow.
If not, it's a good probability that won't happen.
And again, this is just massive stuff, Eric, you're dropping here. This is really, really beneficial for everybody tuning in. I think ultimately, what are your thoughts based off of time frame expectations? Because you're using the weight loss analogy. I mean, losing 50 pounds, 7 days a week, but I didn't hear it within 60 days, within 90 days, within a year, right? Like, so how do you determine based off of the goal, maybe a realistic time frame too? Because I know a lot of people tuning into this are like, okay, I agree with what Eric's saying. I've got to get on this, but just looking at it from a guidance standpoint, how do you educate individuals that you work with on setting those goals in time frame basis? Because Rome wasn't built in a day, right? I mean, it doesn't happen overnight.
So one of the things that we have to understand is that time is just this arbitrary construct of man's imagination, right? And we can get into the physics debate of this, but
there we go.
The only reason for the most part to care about time is if it's interwoven with something non-negotiable and time bound. So for instance, if I have no money in my bank account, and I have no credit and I have no ability to pay my mortgage and I don't know anyone that I could borrow money or way to borrow money, then I probably have a non-negotiable requirement
Ooh.
to make a certain amount of money within a certain amount of time, or I face a consequence as a result.
Hmm.
There, in those scenarios, time matters.
Okay.
In most scenarios, time is largely irrelevant.
Wow.
And therefore, what I'm looking for instead is trend.
Hmm.
As in, are you the type of person who is trending towards someone who would lose 50 pounds and work out 7 days a week if that's your goal?
Wow.
If so, I'm trying to establish the right trend line. More importantly than did you do it on time? Because the time was just a construct of your own desire and your own, like, you just pulled the timeline out of your own ass. So what's the point?
Right.
Now, it could be different. Like, like I set out with a goal to, like do X amount of workouts prior to our wedding.
Okay.
All right, cool. That was a time bound event, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't ask Lauren to change the date of the wedding if I wasn't going to achieve that goal. And so
I need another month. I need 30
right.
days.
Can we push this back just a little bit, sweetie? I didn't do my job. I didn't hold up my own part of the goal here.
Yeah, that'd be so excellent.
So understanding that there are some things that are actually time bound for the most part, they rarely are, especially in real estate. Because I don't know why we care. I don't know why we care about whether it happened January to January or like on a rolling 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that a lot of times I'll measure the team results is what does a rolling 12 months look like? Because measuring a calendar 12 months doesn't tell me about the direction that we're going or the trend line that we're on. It just gives me some easy way to measure it according to some make-believe Mayan calendar.
I really like that analogy, though. You're talking about trend over time, Eric. And I think that a lot of people can apply that to when they're setting goals and expectations, to look at the trends and what's happening that way and setting proper expectations all the way through and through. And I think, diving into the process, kind of going full circle, starting with Lego and kind of ending here with Lego, it's interesting to look at it from the standpoint, because as you mentioned, 1932 starting out, and, I just looked this up. So hopefully the interwebs and or Google search engine is accurate to this particular article on CNBC. But last year's revenue that was generated through Lego was $9.28 billion.
Jeez.
So going from, a little wooden toy duck to now a multi-billion-dollar a year company, it's massive. I mean, it's really
wild.
great to kind of see that come through and through.
Yeah.
So I mean,
they make one toy.
That's it. It's bricks. They're bricks.
Yeah.
It's plastic.
It's wild too when you understand that, like, they've applied that one toy and they've applied creativity to that toy in order to sell more. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the beauty of that is they let the consumer be the person who applies the creativity to it.
So
Lego
true.
cast a vision around what it could look like when built. But at the end of the day, the buyer has to actually go build the vision, and they have to be motivated to execute on the vision, or the toy is worthless.
Perfect correlation and bridge for that gap, Eric. This is awesome, man. Hey, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. As always, this is just really great stuff. Any final thoughts or finishing standpoints before we wrap this one up?
No, I will tell you one thing though I thought was interesting, is I meant to mention, was you asked about the idea of like how does somebody hire and then align goals of their people. One thing that I see happens a ton is people hire in their organization and they give people jobs, but the job doesn't actually make the boat go faster. The job has something where the person that is being paid to do a to-do list, but the to-do list doesn't cause results in the actual business itself. I see that all the time on people's P&Ls, where people are paid for jobs that don't directly correlate to results that change the company. And they end up being an employment center. Facebook for the most part, Twitter, Amazon. These were places that were employing tens of thousands of people who all of a sudden lost jobs, and fundamentally nothing changed with the consumer experience or with the company itself. which means those people had really no impact on the company's bottom line, but they were absorbing resources from the bottom line itself. I can't tell you the amount of people that I see on a regular basis who could probably retire by now in their business if they would stop paying people to do jobs that don't matter.
Eric, I think, and look, if you want to go there with this, I think this is an incredible episode to dive into. I mean, P&L is not a sexy topic for a lot of individuals. However, the statement that you just made is massive. And I think that real estate professionals, entrepreneurs need to understand, look, taking a look at the numbers and the tasks that are being done is a massive thing. And there's so much repositioning that can be done much more efficiently and cost effectively that are actually going to generate more revenue. They're not just trying to tighten the belt and save money, but also to produce more transactions. So I would love to jump into an episode on the sexy side of P&Ls.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's an incredibly important topic. I could tell you that in the past few weeks, I've had conversations with people who sell 400 houses a year, two different organizations. They each sell 400 houses a year. One of them spends about $400,000 a year. The other one spends $2.2 million. They get quite literally the exact same outcome.
Oof. Huge.
That's literally the difference of someone retiring in a really short period of time or not by how they manage what people do on a daily basis and whether the job that someone gets paid for actually matters.
I love it, man. I say we start with the next one that way. I think that's a lot of attention. People are going to love this one. Eric, thanks as always. I appreciate your time. And everybody, thank you. Love and support, continued nature through disruptance. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.